What did we just witness? As in the prospect game against the Montreal Canadiens, we saw Topi Niemela shock the hockey universe by having a game that was quite frankly insane. So to break that down, as well as discuss Fraser Minten, he was injured and we have an update on his front. And we also have some other prospects who really surprised Leafs fans. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're a part of the 70 or so percent and weren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're trying to surpass Habs Digest, who just hit 14,000 subscribers. We're on their tail, so if you want to help us surpass them, we can't be behind them, guys. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. But Darius, a lot to go over today, and a lot to go over. So we have some Minten injury updates. We're going to be focusing on a couple of prospects as well that in the second prospect game really shocked us. And obviously in the first one, we saw Easton Cowan and Fraser Minten, specifically Easton Cowan, really shine in that game. And in the game yesterday against the Montreal Canadiens, we saw a ton of things that are going to be very big heading into the upcoming season, but also just for the Leafs' future in general. And let's just start with the guy who I mentioned in the intro there. He had 5 assists in 2 games versus the Canadiens prospect this weekend in Montreal. And he's a guy, Topi, where we kind of spoke about him for a while and way before, even last season, we're making videos on him. And then he started to phase out a little bit, but now he's just took this weekend by storm, quite frankly, alongside Easton Cowan, but that was shadowed a little bit, but it's time to talk about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, Easton Cowan had a great first game, and he scored another goal in the second game as well. But when you look at some of the other Leafs prospects, which we'll focus on today, Niemela, I mean, he had a quiet 5 points this weekend. Like, and I say quiet in the way that obviously he put up points, but it's almost like you didn't really notice him. And I think it's a good thing in that way. Like, he was very steady back there, and he just knew what he was doing. Like, he didn't stand out because he was making mistakes or anything like that. So I think, he really stood out. And I think if you ask a lot of Leaf fans after this weekend, he's climbed up the depth chart quite a bit, and he had a pretty good season last year with the Marlies anyway, and he's going to be there again this year because obviously the defense core is pretty much made up for the Leafs. But if there are any injuries, I think he's really climbed up the depth chart for not only me but a lot of other people, so we could see him in the NHL at some point this season, maybe just for a couple games like we saw Rafai last year as well. So he could definitely be an option for the Leafs. And again, I thought it was a pretty, quiet 5 points. He didn't do anything flashy. He was just playing his game, right? And he looked head and shoulders above a lot of the players on the ice. Obviously, maybe not Fraser Minten or Easton Cowan, and Fraser Minten we'll get to in a little bit. And a couple other prospects look great as well. But this was a really good performance for him. And I think he's starting to take a step in the direction where he's not really a prospect anymore. He's, in the system, and he could see some NHL time. So that was good to see from him.
Yeah, and that's why I said in the intro how he kind of shocked a lot of the hockey fans, because on Twitter, the discourse was, I know a few Habs fans out there who didn't even know who this guy was, and then he came out and had a quiet 5 points and really surprised everybody, whether you were a Leafs fan or a Habs fan. We didn't speak about this guy before, leading up to this prospect camp. We haven't spoken about him too much, and for him to come out and produce on a similar level production-wise to guys like Easton Cowan, Fraser Minten, even some of the Habs prospects as well, was something that was very surprising. But you mentioned it, he really has risen up the depth chart for the Toronto Maple Leafs prospect, and he's probably going to have an impact on the Leafs at some point soon in the near future. Maybe not to start the year, but heading into next season and beyond, depending on how he continues to develop. But 5 points in 2 games, especially in a prospect game, is very interesting. And I'm excited to see what he does for the Marlies this year, because this is a big season for him. If he can go out and really shine, then that'll be a big stepping stone for him. And let us know what your thoughts are on that, and we'll continue to discuss that a little bit. But Darius, some other things happened in this game. It took 2 games for Leafs prospects to bully and embarrass Lane Hutson. Now, a lot of Habs fans out there were, of course, saying how well Lane Hutson played, and he did have a couple of good games. Easton Cowan was still the best player on the ice. I'm going to just throw that out there. But what else did you see? And we obviously, had another prospect we'll let you touch on now, who was very, very good as well. Cade Weber also had a really good weekend. Just a lot of positives to take away from here, and some things that, as far as prospect weekends go, what we witnessed was about as good, aside from the injury, which we'll get into a little bit later, as good as we could have ever imagined. And it makes the camp battle even harder, which is exactly what Brad Treliving spent the entire offseason setting up here.
Yeah, Marshall Finney laying the boom. He's really brought the physicality to the camp so far, being the guy who injured Ben Danford so far, and obviously hitting Lane Hutson here. And the second game got really physical. It almost seemed like the game plan from the Montreal Canadiens was, we have to be more physical with these guys, because the Leafs were just kind of doing whatever they wanted in the first game, at least it seemed, in terms of, not too much physicality. So it really got turned up yesterday, and I think the Leafs answered the bell, or the Leafs prospects, I should say, answered the bell as well, which was really good to see. And, there's a couple other prospects too. Like, I love what I saw from Cade Weber yesterday too. I don't think, he's going to make the team. He was probably a little bit higher on the depth chart to me during the summer, but actually seeing some of these guys play, you get a better idea and feel of where they may end up. But he's going to look great, like on the Toronto Marlies, right? Like he's another guy that we'll see in a couple years. He does look good, but probably a couple steps behind for the NHL right now. And obviously, Hervinen, like, I feel like he's been in the organization for so long already. It's not the case. He's only been here for 4 years. He's developing very nicely. He's a little bit of a smaller forward. Again, Kyle Dubas administration pick, but he's stuck around and he does have some bite to his game. So nice to see him pick up a couple points this weekend too. And I like this game, honestly. Yes, he's a smaller forward, and I think the Leafs are pivoting away from that and they want a heavier team, but he is definitely going to have a big year on the Marlies again. He had a pretty decent season last year too. So lots to like from the Leafs prospects this week. And obviously we're not going to see a lot of them past this weekend and, past this week as well, as the training camps kind of split off and everyone is trying to figure out where they land. But nice to see that a lot of them are developing nicely and took a big step over the summer too.
Yeah, and like John Gruden mentioned a couple days ago, this is the only weekend that him, as an AHL coach, was going to see Easton Cowan, and a lot of these guys we're now not going to see for a while. Obviously, in training camp, we'll see some of these guys, but playing games, fully televised games again, is something that we had to cherish for this weekend, especially as the prospects continue to shine there. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with a lot of these players, whether that's Cade Weber, whether that's obviously guys like Niemela, but now I want to talk about a couple things. Obviously, we can talk about Dennis Hildeby as well. A lot of just positives in this game. Hildeby was very, very good. But I want to talk about Fraser Minten's injury here because that was the big point of the night, or the big talking point of yesterday's game. You can see some angles of the hit. We're hoping he's going to be okay. When it happened, Leafs fans were very scared. They were up in arms, and I was a little bit nervous. I was also slightly relieved that hopefully it doesn't seem too serious. But among prospects that the Leafs have, obviously you never want to see any of them injured. But Fraser Minten and Easton Cowan are the guys you really want to protect the most here. Obviously it wasn't Easton Cowan who got injured, it was Fraser Minten. Hopefully he'll be able to be okay, because like we've been discussing, and you especially in the video talking about game one, he's rising up the charts, and there was a chance, it still is a chance, that he plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. Maybe not to start the year, but he's on the cusp here.
Yeah, there's definitely still a chance he plays for the Leafs this year. I think probably more likely than not, like with Easton Cowan, like 1A, 1B prospects there, right? Like they're the two top guys. And he got hit yesterday, kind of an awkward hit by David Reinbacher of the Montreal Canadiens. And he left the game as well. And they're saying it's something to do with his foot or his leg, something like that. They're not really offering too many specifics at this time, but it could have been precautionary as well, just like Ben Danford. There's no, they didn't come out and say he had a concussion or anything. They're probably just waiting to see how he feels and get him back into the lineup. And I'm not as concerned with Fraser Minten as I am with Ben Danford missing time in terms of injury updates, because this is Danford's first camp and you want him to get that experience. Fraser Mitten's been here before. So hopefully, of course, I'm not saying it's, okay that he's injured or anything like that. Obviously, I hope he's back right away and he can see some time in camp, which opens up later this week. But they haven't said anything like it's too serious, but he did miss the rest of the game. Could have been precautionary. The game was getting more physical. So hopefully he's okay. We'll see him in training camp. But if he does miss time, that is going to be significant news, because there's a lot of guys fighting for a lot of spots. If he misses time and he's a step behind, maybe we don't see him with the Leafs to start the year, or, somebody else takes that spot, right, in training camp. So it's going to be interesting. This is an interesting development.
Yeah, a lot of things going on. And as training camp approaches, there's going to be a lot of news surrounding one of the biggest camp battles in recent memory for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Brad Living set that up. We also get to see some of the new guys who are going to start playing and some of the signings very, very soon. But that'll wrap it up. You're going to want to make sure to hit that subscribe button, because there's a lot of news coming for you guys, and we'll keep you up to date with the videos. See you soon.